Good afternoon. Kind of continuing on the previous video, which talks about amending the soil when putting stuff in the ground, tropical fruit trees in the ground. Really wanted to show you really quick. So if you come here, in addition to applying to in grounds, actually, if you come here really quick, wanted to also show you these two trees were on sale, so I just couldn't help it. But got them. They were they're pears. They're not tropicals. But really wanted to show you really quick. I mean, this is the amount of sand that I applied to my soil. I mean, it is, especially in containers. You want a lot of sand for drainage. So yeah, $10 a piece. So I got all of them. So now I wanted to talk about though putting something in the ground, a tropical fruit tree in the ground. So this is what I've got on my side here. The hole that was over here used to be a pond. Actually, let me get my shovel so I can show you. Used to be a pond, okay? We're gonna be putting several trees in this spot. It's relatively small, but I think I'm gonna be able to get away with putting 5 trees. 2 trees and 3 seedlings in this little section. Again, it's going to be surrounded by its fellow trees, uh, providing them with a very nice microclimate, very nice growing environment for these trees. The tree that we're going to be putting in the ground is going to be berry, lemon drop mangosteen, and a bunch of mango seedlings that I snuck out of Hawaii. Yeah, I don't know what the statute of limitation is, but I'm not admitting anything. I'm just saying. So if you come here, I actually want to show you. So what I have in here is really combination of native dirt, clay soil, clay dirt. Uh, so far, 8 bags of sand. Um, I know there's some questions about what type of sand to use. There's really just 2 major types. Um, any sand is better than no sand. But if possible, the type of sand that you should be aiming for is generally advertised as being play sand or all-purpose sand. The reason why is these sand particles tend to be rounder, whereas the other types, which are also advertised as being paving sand, they're more angular, they're more jagged. And those are really the types of sand that a lot of concrete cement companies use just to bind the stuff together to make it concrete. Whereas these are rounder, so when you water, it's going to go straight down. And then lastly, I know I get a lot of flack for using this, but peat moss. In my case, I think the benefits of using peat moss far outweighs any negatives, particularly the sustainability of it. But that's what I've got. Just really just 3 ingredients in here. So if you come here, yeah, I mean, I went ahead and just mixed them all up already. Um, so it is going to be nice and aesthetic, as well as draining, as well as with the peat moss, the ability for it to hold water, as well as provides aeration. So a couple of pointers. Let's see. Yeah, a couple of pointers. If you are going to be putting a tree in the ground, okay, if you know that you are going to be putting it in the ground from a container, don't water the container. you want the roots to be on the dry side. So that way when you pour it out, most of the roots should still be intact. So that's one pointer. And another pointer is, in this case, it doesn't really apply, but let me show you actually. Got another tree that I'm also going to be putting in the ground. He's in a 15-gallon container. In my opinion, way too big for the container, just based on the size of the trunk and the overall root system. I mean, you've got to think, I mean, nurseries, they are essentially the middleman. You know, they get their products from wholesalers, who they in turn then typically upsize the container and sell for more. Nothing wrong with that. That's just the way the world works. But I mean, this particular guy, I'm pretty confident he should be really more in a maybe a 5, maybe even a 7-gallon container. But he just happens to be in a 15-gallon container. So that being the case, I'm pretty sure that the root systems in this container is in the tree anyway. It's going to be pretty minimal. So when I dug it up, I mean, when you look at it, I mean, this is really it. It's there's not a whole lot of root system down here, which would mean, in my case, the hole that I've dug for him is right around the same size as a container, because I know the roots aren't that vast. So, but generally speaking, when digging a hole, you want to try to aim for the width of the hole rather than the depth. So in my case, just because I've got a nice little large hole here, I mined it heavily. I'm simply gonna just dig it up and then put him in the ground. So Milkberry is gonna go over here, and then the Lemon Drop Mangosteen is gonna go right in front of him, and the mangoes are going to be wherever I could find space. But the mangoes will be right in front of the Milkberry, just because this guy is pretty sensitive to our sun. I mean, from my experience, these guys get burnt easily. So now, I have had no experience with a lemon drop mangosteen. From everything I read, from everything I've gathered, they do okay in our climate. Preferably, they prefer a much warmer climate than what we have, but they are purported to do okay. Concerning sun exposure, I'm getting a lot of conflicting information about it. Some say it should be planted in full sun. Some say it should be planted in partial shade. However, from my experience, there's one thing that you really could maybe kind of deduce from it. Look at the size of the foliage. Awesome looking foliage, right? Generally, it's kind of a rule of thumb, and there are exceptions, but generally the rule of thumb with trees is, the thicker the foliage, just like the mangoes, the thicker the foliage, the more sun they can take. So this tells me that it's probably going to be okay with our sun, which is why I'm electing to put him right in front of the Milkberry, hoping that he'll take the brunt of the sun, and then essentially shading the Milkberry when need to. You know, worst case scenario in my case, if I find that he's getting sun damage, I could easily just put up a shade cloth. But that's the strategy here. And then again, the mangoes are gonna probably go around the perimeter of this hole. But yeah, this little pond section that I've dug up, heavily amended with really 3 ingredients: native dirt, peat moss, and a lot of sand. You got to have a lot of sand. So anyhow, yeah, I'm going to be going putting this guy in the ground now. One thing, forgot what I was forgot about the other thing. Look at the sky above us, okay? It's forecasted to rain, which is actually why I picked today to put these guys in the ground. I mean, I've had these guys for a while, but today is the day that I'm choosing to put these guys in the ground just because of a couple of things. Number one, it's forecasted to rain tonight and tomorrow. Number two, it's overcast. And number three, the threat of frost is mostly gone. I know next week we've got a couple of days where it's going to be in the high 30s, but it's not going to be frosty, let's just say. So that's why I'm picking today to do some planting of these sun-loving tropical fruit trees. So here's a Doc Mai seedling. I'm going to put him right there. Here's a golden glow seedling. He looks like he'll do okay over here. And last one. This particular one I just like just because it is very, very fragrant. He's a Katimon mango. So that's really it. So now if you've noticed, it's kind of at a mound. It's slightly above the yard. It's above grade, and this is intentional, just because when I water it, I know it's gonna settle down to eventually become at grade. So that's really it. The next step for me to do really is simply to water it. However, wanted to also take the opportunity to put this ruby longan in the ground. So it's simply a longan that's just red. Really nothing special about it. I mean, from the perspective of taste, it's a longan, just red. The exterior of the fruit is red, foliage is red. That's really it. It's just cool. So now, again, exact same method here, except in this case, I'm gonna add a few more sand here, just to kind of help it out, just because why not? Now, the next step is optional, but in my case, I did go ahead and just sacrifice a container, just because, I mean, I wanted to demonstrate to you the root system of on this particular tree. I think that should be fine. Yeah, see what I mean? There's like no roots at all. I mean, this is really just the nursery's upsized in a container. So, quick pointer. If you notice, this guy is obviously on a mound. It is obviously higher than my concrete patio here. And this is intentional. What happens is, because of the gazebo here, this section actually gets a lot of water. So I don't want him to be flooded. So that's why he's raised a bit. But that's really it. The last thing for us to do is simply to create a little berm here for him. So that way, when I water it, the water stays within the confines of the berm. Now notice I didn't create a berm on the pond hole there, just because it's already been dug. There's really no need for me to create a berm there. So if you come here, there's one last step that I normally do for in-ground trees, and that would be to actually go and just fertilize them. So now, being that these are organic granular fertilizers, it's going to take the trees generally a couple weeks before the nutrients even made available to the tree. By that time, the tree should have gone through its transplant shock, and it should be fine. And once it's done going through the shock, it then gets all this nutrient. So it's a win-win. Here's the end result. This is what it should look like. Now, again, it's gonna rain tonight, so I'm just lightly watering it. But if it's in your case, if it's not forecasted to rain, you'll wanna thoroughly water the newly planted trees. So that really concludes the video here. I mean, talking about being crazy dense, but yeah, I mean, all 5 of these trees should coexist nicely in this little section, being really surrounded by more mature trees, which serve to protect these younger guys here. So that's really the gist of planting a tropical wood tree. Again, it really is about the soil, in that these guys, I mean, this is their home now, so you've got to make sure that they've got a good solid foundation. And generally, when you get that addressed, regardless of the core, the environment that gets thrown to them, they're fine. So anyhow, all right, have a good afternoon.